You're listening to episode 64.
Welcome to Behind the Brand, a podcast dedicated to strategically building your online business. Here we go behind the scenes and share stories and strategies that can help you build your own dream business that supports your own dream life. I'm your host, Kelsey Kerslake, and I'm the CEO of pinegateroad, a branding and web design agency for online businesses and influencers. We create online presences that aren't just pretty, they're powerful. To learn more about working with pinegateroad, head to pinegateroad.com and schedule a free consult call. Now on to the show.
Welcome to the show, you guys. I am pumped to have you here today, as always. So we have an exciting guest on the show. I know all of our guests are very exciting, but we have Erin Lindstrom on the show today, and she is just a magical unicorn of a human who... She's like a sales strategist. She runs mastermind. She's a coach. She's a human design expert. She's like all the things to help you do sales, run your business, lead a life in alignment, and just have an amazing business and life that are all aligned. And I'm really just obsessed with everything she has to share. She runs a group, website, whatever, called Shiny Bitches, and you can follow her on Facebook, research that, join the group if you want to be around other shiny people because she collects them, and I just love hanging out in her space, and what she cultivates in this world is just pure magic. So I'm excited to have her on the show. We kind of have like a free form conversation around all things business, sales, motherhood, coming into yourself, and how finding yourself can really help you lead your business in a big way. So get excited, and we're going to go on to the show. Hi, Erin. How are you?
I am awesome. How are you?
I am awesome as well. I'm so excited to just chat all the things with you today.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Of course. All right. Why don't we start off and just like give a brief introduction to who you are, what you do, how you got to where you are today, a little bit.
Just casual.
Casual.
Who are
I know
you?
it's
How
like,
did you get here?
What's your meaning in life and your journey?
Okay, I can do all of that. We'll be here for 37 minutes, but I got this. Hi. Okay, so I'm Erin Lindstrom. I'm coming to you live from Norfolk, Virginia, where I've lived for about 5 years with my two lovely children. And I am a sales strategist and the founder of Shiny Bitches. What the heck does that mean? Basically, I work with clients in a couple different ways. Shiny Bitches is a network of high vibe female entrepreneurs that I created a couple years ago because I used to do sales for a copywriting agency. And I would talk to people on the phone and be like, oh my God, I love you. We just had the best conversations, and learning about people's businesses and their vision and like their why was powerful for me. And it was powerful for them to be heard. So Shiny Bitches kind of came from that because I was like, we need to stick together and we need to know each other, because everyone I spoke to was sitting at home by themselves doing this. And we were like missing the community aspect. So I think that's part of why our conversation.
I'll just say your Facebook group is magical. Like Megan added me just randomly a couple months ago, and I listen to all of your lives. Like it's like one of the things that like constantly pops up because I'm just like, I love everything that everybody's posting in there. And Facebook groups can really like end up dying sometimes, but like you keep yours going, you keep it just raw, real, but like magical at the same time. That's my word for you. Like I am always just like, please just share your magic, because that is what you are.
I received that. Thank you. I was talking to someone the other day. I was like, my next mastermind is going to be called a magic mind, because like that's really
I love it.
Here. Yeah. So Shiny Bitches is like the network of all of these amazing women. I do in-person live events and bring women together. I actually think that's the most important thing you can do for your business, which seems weird. But really being with people that can see you and hear you and support you is transformational. Yeah. And then I also do sales strategy and copywriting. And basically I help Shiny Bitches make more money. And to me, that's like twofold, because yes, it's all the like, what are we doing strategically? And then the other side of that is like, what do you need to do or remove or whatever to actually create more money in your life and to actually be able to have it and to feel safe and happy and all of that fun stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. All right. So why don't we talk making more money? Go.
Let's talk about making more money. Okay. So when I think about making more money, everyone wants, well, maybe not everyone. The women I speak to anyway, all have that in common, that they want to be making more money. They want to increase their income.
They have their internal big why, but usually the way to get to the why is making more money, to have more freedom to do what they want to impact the world.
Totally. So what I like to try to do is look at like, who are you and what do you want is where I start with everyone, right? Because the money, as important as it feels and seems, especially in 2018, it actually isn't that important. Like it is and it isn't, because really, if I could have a roof over my head and like a house that I love, if my kids were provided for and wonderful, and if I could travel and like live my best life too, I don't actually care what the number in my bank account says, right? Like it's more about like what I'm doing. And then the other side of that is like my vision and purpose and what kind of change do I want to create in the world? Again, I would do that all day and the number doesn't actually matter. But figuring out how much what you want costs is, I think, like the best way to kind of figure out like, okay, what am I going for in this 2018 money thing way? So by doing that, I get a sense of like, okay, where am I going with this? And then I like to play games. And by games, what I basically mean is like, this is a big jigsaw puzzle. When we have businesses and we're, working with clients, selling services, we get to kind of figure out like, oh, if I want to make this much money, how many things do I want to sell to get there? Do I want 4 clients or do I want 40 clients? Do I want a $97 product or a $9,700 service? Like, what am I actually talking about? And I think there's so much freedom in that game, because you get to really figure out like, how do I want to show up? And then how can I monetize that? And then create the plan from there. Yeah. So that's all like the strategy, like the let's figure it out side. The other side of me is like, okay, great. And what do you believe about money? Like, what did you learn from your parents? Do you believe that making money is really hard? If so, like that needs to be tweaked and like looked at and like what's under that and why, right? And then also like, what would it mean if you had an extra $5,000 a month? Like whether that's how would your life change and what does that look like? And have you ever had that much money, like extra? Did your parents have extra? Because we tend to pick up things like as kids and make them our norm without even realizing it. So I think there's just always more to look at, so we can see like, where did this come from? Why do I believe this? Yes. Why am I creating this over and over again? Because it's something that really has to heal instead of like change. If that makes any sense.
No, I feel weirdly, quote unquote blessed, because I think my parents did not have the money block situation. And so it was never my norm. So I've always been able to kind of like dream big and think like any money goal is literally possible in my life. And that's kind of been a blessing. And I've gone from like very low amounts of money to, for my equilibrium, pretty high, and everything in between. And but I going through some like mentorship programs and like having this community, there's so many money blocks out there. And sometimes I'm just like, I want to shake people. But
totally. It's
like, how do you, I shouldn't say I want to shake people on this podcast, but whatever.
Lovingly. Just like
lovingly. Hug them. Be like, it's okay. You can do this.
Totally.
Which we kind of, like we do in like my mentorship program. Like a big thing of that was just like, with the girls, like I got in, we were like, okay, let's break down these money blocks and be open to receiving more money for your services, because that was really holding a lot of them back from showing up in the world the way they wanted to. And that was my first like, okay, like this is the first like mentorship program I'm doing, and I'm having to help them through this. And it was really cool to see how like breaking those down, they were able to just like have astronomical months after that. It was crazy.
Totally.
So
there's so much we like hold on to. And I think it's interesting how it changes too, as we kind of like grow up, because I mean, we do a lot for ourselves, right? To create our money mindset. Like our parents give us some things, but then we learn from the world too. Like, what does it mean to be rich? Are rich people evil? Like we pick up these little things. So just kind of taking a second and just being mindful about your money and your money beliefs can change everything. Because once
how can you start to break them down? Like if you kind of realize like, oh, I have this belief, like what is the first step or the process of?
So I think getting really curious about them and asking yourself like deeper and deeper questions. I think this is a great thing to work through like with a coach or a mentor of some sort too, because having someone else hold space and like guide you just makes it that much easier. But I like to ask myself, and I will do this in journaling too, what do I believe about money? Put down a bunch of thoughts. And then the things that, you know, my positive mind is like, that's not true. There's some like other form of, right, my ego is like, oh yes, it is. So I like to go through and be like, okay, so what, if this is true, what else is true? Like, what do I need to believe for this to be true? And you can kind of like go another level into it and just see what comes up there, and then go another level into that as well.
Can you give some like concrete examples, or maybe like very common themes that are popping up within people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the most common thing that comes up is safety stuff. And I don't mean safety like I'm going to like be hurt if I have money, but it's more like, well, actually here, I'll tell you one of mine, because this actually does come up for me. Part of my money stuff is a lack of safety with having money, because I have a brother who is wonderful, bless his soul, and also like makes really poor choices, or has historically. So he's actually in prison right now, and he is a heroin addict, or was a heroin addict. And part of what he did over the years was steal money and steal jewelry from my loved ones. So something that comes up for me is like, well, if I have more, then there's more to take, right? Or more to be had. And like, you're actually making yourself more susceptible to crime, harm, danger, in whatever way that looks. So actually getting really clear about that for myself was important, because it allows you to be like, oh, okay, are these things real? Kind of, you know what I mean? Like, yes, because that happened, but like moving forward, am I actually in danger? No. Like, is anything going to happen if there's more? No. Like, what do I need to actually feel safe? And I think that's the really important thing too, is like, what do we need to do to remind ourselves that like everything is actually okay? Yeah. There's other stuff that comes up with people earning too much and thinking about taxes, and thinking about their partner who is like afraid of having to pay too much money instead of like having a big tax return. So while that seems like kind of silly, like of course you want to pay money because that means you have more money coming in, it's not for everyone. And when we're dealing with like partners, husbands, girlfriends, whatever, taking into account like this other person grew up with all of their own stories. So navigating that together is always really interesting as well.
Yeah, interesting. I like hearing. I mean, I have my own stuff too, and just I think everybody has their stories. Like, totally, might have not blocked me from quote unquote making money, but it like I have some like thoughts about maybe like the relationships. Like, if I make like $1 billion, like the relationships that will like be in my life, and like how that interaction would happen. Like, I don't like that stuff. I'm like afraid of.
Totally,
but I'm not gonna let it stop me.
Right. Anyway. No, absolutely. And that's like a choice that like you consciously make as a business owner who's like, no, I'm doing this. Like, this is what I'm creating. And I think that's so interesting, because starting off, I know in my life, when I kind of stepped into the online world and really like started doing things and making more money, I had to take a step away from like stay-at-home mom life, which I love moms. Some of my best friends are moms. But what I was finding was that I was in these groups where it was very like complaint focused and everyone's connecting over the struggles, which like, it was hard. Like, there's no doubt about that. Like, you know, there was lack of sleep, and oh my gosh, everything was baby centric. And there was another part of me that was like, oh my God, but life is actually really good too. And it's like kind of that hashtag blessed conundrum of like, yeah, this is really hard, and I have nothing to complain about because my life could be so much worse. Like, and so I found myself really struggling with that. And when I started in the online world, I made myself different. Like, I was doing something different. I was making more money, so I didn't have the same complaints about my ex-husband's in the military. So like being stuck in a pay grade, like no longer applied to me. And I had to kind of decide and figure out like what the balance was of like, okay, is it okay if I'm losing people who don't support me? Because I know what I want and I know what I'm working towards. And ultimately that is kind of what I decided, was to like keep going and like deal with the loss of friendship and loneliness that came with the entrepreneurship in the beginning of that. And by doing that, I actually found a bunch of people who submit to the same thoughts that I do, that like, of course you can have it all. Like, yes, you can make changes in your life. Yes, you can make more money. You can create the dream life you want. And that was so important. And I think one of the most interesting things about that too, and I feel like this happens in all sorts of ways, is that as I started to believe that and bring more people into my life that were of that vibration, I guess, a bunch of the people that I like had kind of isolated myself from or just taken some distance from actually like saw what I was doing and were like, what are you doing? And were really interested and kind of came full
I love
circle
that.
around like, oh, and then we were good friends again 2 years later. So sometimes like, yeah, you have to isolate yourself a little bit and make, commit to what you actually want, and loss happens. And the right people, the ones that are supposed to be there, like it'll all happen again. They'll come back. Like it's okay. As long as you're honoring, I think, like your purpose and your beliefs, like it all works out.
Yeah, I found that too. I have like several, not like I did not have a drastic like people falling away from me, like, but I'll kind of just be like, I need to stay in my little mindset bubble. And if you don't want to be in that, like, it just is what it is. And I kind of have blocked some of the conversations I'll have around certain people. But it's interesting to see, like, as I kind of am sharing things on the podcast or my Instagram and like gently talking about like energy and meditation and things like in conversations, people are like, I feel like I'm so Kelsey, like I have my crystals and I'm like meditating now, and I'm just like, I never thought you'd be into that, but yay. And it's just cool to see those like little bits and pieces coming out of people, because I'm just kind of living in my quote unquote truth now.
Totally. Isn't
more
that
so
cool
yeah
too? Yeah, I love that. And like I think it's so interesting to think about like what are the things that we are hiding because they feel like a little bit too much or a little too weird or a little too whatever. Like those are the things that people actually are magnetized to you about. And like it's vulnerable to share them because I think we're all afraid of like not belonging and being alone and losing our friends and all of that fun stuff. But as we do, like, I mean, people love that because it is authentic, and that's Shiny Bitches is like, together we shine brighter.
Yeah. And I was having a conversation. Yeah, I was having a conversation with a friend who was like, I'm afraid to go on Instagram stories. And I'm like, I just share whatever. And it's interesting because you think you need to be on there sharing about business and what you're doing and all of that to get the clients. And I'm like, I this weekend shared about my Halloween costume dilemma and like how I didn't know what I wanted to be. I got so many DMs like over that, and people are connecting on these very just tiny but real moments rather than the I'm selling this service and here's how you can change your business and your life. And I think it's important to share those little things, even if it seems scary or weird or not part of your business, but that's what people are connecting to.
Totally. People want you, like everyone. And I think that's, social media is so great, right? Because we all kind of know each other, but when you can actually like give a look inside your world or share your insights or, ramble on about something that happened, that's meaningful and teaching something like, and you are providing value. That's what sells, is like that actual connection. And I think it's so important to like show up and be you, like be the weirdest.
I just love looking at all of the baby pictures of Jack and Violet.
Oh my gosh, yes, the throwbacks. And that's like just part of who I am. And so funny because I have had more people tell me in the last couple of years, like, oh, I didn't know you had kids. Like really? I had no idea. And I'm like, what? Like they're everywhere. Like so it's interesting to me. And so, and I think that just goes to show is like, it's not too much. You're not too much. And what you're sharing isn't too much. And like, if it brings you joy, share it, because you're sharing that energy and people want that energy. And so many times when people decide to hire you, it is because of your energy. And when you're showing up and connecting and like actually building relationships, like that sells long-term.
Yeah. And going back to kind of one of the first points you said about meeting people in person and having that connection, like I found in my business, and I've shared this on the podcast a lot, that most of my business comes because I just meet people in real life, like whether that's at just like gatherings or it's a friend of a friend or I go to a conference. And I think I love being in those spaces, and I'm like energetically probably like my best self when I'm in those places, and then it just weirdly turns into clients somehow, some way. And I love that.
I love that too. And I feel like the best referrals come from people I've met in person, because when you're showing up, and there's a lot of work that goes into like showing up as yourself into these events too. But when you show up and you're really being you, those people experience you like that. And then they're so excited to tell other people about you and what you do. So it really does, like, that is the ripple effect. And I find that too, like, I love going to retreats and events, not only because I love the learning of it. Like I go to things because I like them.
Yeah,
I
same.
love to learn. Like I am ready for a retreat. Like
Uh-huh.
I want my world to be changed. I believe that they're transformational, and I can't remember the last time that I went to anything and didn't get a return on investment because someone ends up being a client or knows someone who becomes a client in the next couple months.
Same.
And I love watching the magic of that unfold of like, yeah, I had an awesome time. And in return, like there's money coming to me.
I'm still getting clients from the first conference I went to in 2013.
That's amazing.
Like people are like, remember when we met at Alt Summit? Like, what was that? 5 years ago? Yeah.
Yep. That's so cool. And I think it makes sense too, like even in masterminds, and not that we're like poaching clients or anything by those means, but when you show up and are yourself and you are doing good services and then you get to know people, like it's natural for people to want to buy from you.
Yeah. Can we talk masterminds? I don't think I've brought this up because I love masterminds. I like run a little designer one that's just like me and like 4 designer friends, and we meet like it's mostly just like a place for us to not vent in a negative way, but just be like, oh, they like get it because they're very much they're very much in the same spot, growing their businesses, and it's just a cool little group. I've been like a facilitator of them. I've been in them. Like I just love them. Let's get your take on them because I don't some people don't even know what they are.
This is true. Okay. So mastermind is basically like usually anyway, like a group coaching container, right? And I love them. And so I have a couple of different ones. I have the Shiny Bitch Circle, which is a mastermind that I'm running right now for clients. And then I also run a like peer-based mastermind, which everyone pays for because I find that you take things more seriously when you're paying for them. So people show up for calls, we help each other, and like we have each other's backs, and we have for a long time. And part of the magic of, both of the groups, the peer group, I'll talk about it because I am part of it and facilitate it. So it's like a very interesting thing. But the way I know that we are all kind of bonded together, and the themes that come up in everyone's lives, like when we share something we're sharing for everyone, is really interesting and important. And I think it's really amazing too, when you can share in the success of other people and support them through that. It reminds you that like, oh yeah, I know her and she's doing it. Like, and that is powerful because it's not like this random person when I'm scrolling Facebook and seeing like, I had a 6-figure launch. Cool. But when you know someone and you see the work that's going into the back end and you know how committed they are to mindset work and all of the things, it's so helpful for your own journey. And having people like you were saying, where you can show up and be like, this is what's really bugging me right now, and actually vent and be heard and not be judged for it. Like they just hold space and listen and know it's part of the journey. And then we move into like, okay, solutions, ideas. And like, sometimes I feel like we can't see for ourselves what other people can see. And it's so easy when you're on the outside of it.
Yes.
So having that like outside, just look in of people that really know you at this point, is so helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just crazy because I was doing one-on-one coaching before and I'd never been part of a mastermind, and it was just night and day. Like you get that amazing support from like one-on-one coaching, which is, you know, a huge up level from like an online course, for example. Right. But then when you get that one-on-one coaching and a group mastermind, and you get all the different opinions and experiences and cheerleaders, and it's just, it's pure magic. And I've gotten some amazing advice, and you know, that's really catapulted my business, having that many people like cheering me on and supporting me along the way, and vice versa, because I'm supporting them hopefully too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one other, so those are like the positive aspects of masterminds, right? I've also been in them before where I felt like, why is she in here? Like, and it was a little bit off kilter. And that's actually one of my favorite things that has ever happened for me. Because I did the same thing as I talked about before, where I like get curious about everything. I'm like, why is this bothering me? Like, what is she doing that is bothering me? And then I'm like, okay, this is me. Like that's some reflection of me that I need to like be chill with. Like maybe sometimes people are needy, like have a lot of questions, and I'm like, oh my God, stop asking questions. Like, can we be more efficient? And then I have to look at myself and be like, okay, like what if there was space for questions? Like, what if this was actually helping? What if this was showing me something about myself that like needs to be paid attention to? And then I've actually reached out to connect with those people that annoy me a little bit on purpose. And I have had the best friendships from that.
Really?
Yes. Like, because I find that the thing between us isn't a thing. It's literally stuff we're making up and projecting and putting between us. And usually they're like some version of us that's like a couple steps behind, and we like don't have compassion for that shit anymore because we should be further along. But when you start to connect with a person, you're like, oh, okay. And how can I help? Like, all of those things really shift everything.
I love that. I've not gotten there, but now I want to try.
Well, you'll see. Next time someone triggers you, like we've created, I mean, I believe a lot in like creation and that we're creating our reality, right? And that's the game we play in our businesses. And so when I think about the people in our lives too, I'm like, okay, why are you here? Like, why did I create this character who's like, has this, I was going to say twerk. That's the wrong word. Quirk, right? Like, what are you here to show me? Because if everyone's teaching me something, like there's something there for me, especially if it's like giving me some sort of reaction.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. I'm going to have to note that, and I'll level up my mindset game.
It's so interesting when we start to notice just like everyone who's around us and why, and who are we being, and what, you know.
Are there instances though in masterminds where it's just like you said, like there's a person that might be like triggering or things like, I don't know, do you get out of that situation or?
That's a good question. So I think it's probably a case-by-case basis. If you're really like having a problem, so that for me like wasn't really a problem, it was like annoying.
Yeah.
I think if you ever feel like unsafe or really like what you bought or is not what's being delivered, conversation with the person who runs the group is necessary. And there's ways to do that, you know, where you're kind of talking about your own feelings and not making it something wrong with the group and other people, and really taking responsibility for our piece of the puzzle, and maybe our expectations were off. Where was the communication problem? And again, like coming back to that curiosity of like, okay, what's actually happening here and how can I make this better?
Cool. All right. What other magic do you want to talk about?
Oh, the magic. Let's talk about.
I brought Erin on and I was like, we have no questions, and I'm just going to have you share all the goodness, because I've had several conversations with Erin over the past, year or two. And I'm just like, every conversation I leave and I'm like, tell me more. And I was like, please just come on the show and share all the things.
I would say, so when we were going back and forth talking about this, I think what my like last email said was that I think the most important thing you can do for your business is get to know yourself. And one of the ways I like to do that is with human design, which we've chatted about a bunch too.
Yes.
And if you're not familiar with human design, basically it's a combination of like astrology, the Kabbalah, the I Ching, and a bunch of other stuff. And it charts the time you were born and then 88 days before you were born. And then you can see like who you are and how you were designed, your conscious mind and your unconscious mind. And knowing about that is probably one of the most transformational things I find for my clients. Because you can really tap into how you are to interact with the world and then use that in your business as well. So to get money and sales flowing to you, there's different ways to do that. Like Kelsey, for example, do you mind me sharing this?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Kelsey is a manifester. So she gets to like inform what she's doing and walk around the world, just kind of like getting ideas and putting them out there. I am a generator. So I am more of like a worker bee type. And when I have ideas, I usually write them down, and then I need to wait for something outside of me to respond to. And I have like a straight yes or no, so kind of just stepping into that and learning more, getting curious, whether you're using like the Colby or Myers-Briggs, or there's like a million different tests. And I think they're wonderful to actually help increase your sales, because the more you know about yourself, the more you know how to be and how to feel good about
somebody
that.
Even posted in the Shiny Bitch group about using your Colby like on sales calls, and I was like, that is awesome. Like I love that there was somebody translating, and if Colby's another like personality, not even personality, just like the way in which you show up in the world kind of thing.
Totally.
And how you can notice what other people are and almost use that in a sales call to make them, not make them, I don't know, just so you understand them more and they feel more understood, and you can kind of like change around the ways in which you're presenting things and talking to them about their future or their past and all of that.
You can start to like cater to their needs and language in a way that like you couldn't without being aware of like the way different people are. I do that in copy too. That was Mandy Miller who has that guide.
Oh, okay.
Yep. There's like thinking about Colby and human design and just the ways in which we interact with the world and like how we make decisions. I listen to people on sales calls to hear their language to get a sense of them, and will then cater my pitch accordingly, or just make sure I kind of hit all the different ways. So like if you need information, I'm going to give you information. If you're just a very energetic, let's do this person, I'm going to take your credit card number and then send you the information later.
Yep.
If you're a systems person, you're going to need to know like how we're going to work together procedurally, like what's going to happen when we hang up, when's our next call, how will you get a calendar invite, like all of the things. And I think it's so important to take that not only on the phone for conversions, but also to translate that into your copy. And when you start to know about yourself, I find that your audience usually is pretty similar to you because
like, that's what I was going to ask. Like, cause I'm a high quick start but I do have like fact finders that come into my world. So this is Colby stuff. So KOLBE, if you want to look that up. So I tend to do a little bit of both, and I kind of like start with the quick start, but then if people, I open it up for questions. So I like allow people to like ask the questions, get all the facts that they need, and I'm there for them. And if I know they're Colby, like there's one girl who's joining the Pinegateroad Academy, and I know she's like an 8 fact finder. So I'm like, let's schedule this call. Like I want all of your, like, I want to honor your fact finding, like just time for questions. She's like, okay, thank you.
Yep. It's so great. It's like, this is all coming back to like curiosity and how important it is for both ourselves, our clients, like who are these people? We're all people with like unique needs and desires. And when we start to like really tap into that, it just becomes so much easier to sell. Like, it flies.
Can we talk about the sales process? And
we can.
Did we talk about that a little bit? Making more sales and
sure. So making more sales. So kind of going back to the beginning of like, what does what I want cost? That's where I start with sales too. And then I create a triangle, which I learned it's like a Mike Dooley thing. Laura Wright kind of took and made her own, and then I've made it my own.
I have too. I'm like, I teach my people.
We all have different ones. And so I combine a triangle with a thermometer. Which sounds
oh my gosh, I'll literally like, here is my thermometer.
Oh, do you have the thermometer too?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. So I like to know what my money goal is, to actually look at it, to know where it's going, to decide what I'm doing, what I'm asking the universe for, who my people are, how I want to feel through all of this. Because like I said before, like the actual amount, whatever, as long as I feel all of the things, that's cool. And then I keep track with the thermometer. As far as actually like, okay, cool, I can have goals. How do I actually sell? I think the most important thing we like also kind of touched on is like that networking building. Or network building rather. I find that the most important thing I do to have more sales is to be in the energy of sales, which to me is just like connection. So I make sure that I am talking to people in my community, whether that's people I know and I'm kind of just like reconnecting and building my relationships, whether it's new people who just come in and I'm like, who are you? I don't know you. I would love to chat, like, because I genuinely do want to know the people in my community. And then thinking too, to like any live events I've gone to, who did I love there that I want to reconnect with, or who did I not really get to talk to and who can I connect with? And when I'm in the energy of actually connecting and talking to all of the people, I find that like money flows to me too. Because you can't help but not sell when you're just talking about what you're doing and the people are kind of like in the right world. And then
I think that goes into like the triangle too. Like I guess just to explain the triangle, like on one side, you kind of put like the things you're willing to do to get to the goal. And then on the other side, you're like, what can the universe do to support me in that mission? And like, sometimes I'll just be like, you just think of things that you can literally take action on in order to get it going. And right now mine are like, let's just book connection calls. And like, I have no idea where these connection calls will go, but it's like in the energy of doing and being around people who are in this world.
Yep. Connection calls are great because I feel like you're planting seeds and then that's cool. Then you go do all of your other stuff and like they grow. You water them, you come back, like you say hi and like
it's like,
you're
let's go make friends. It's the best
totally.
job ever.
Totally. Like that's the most fun thing I personally think. Like it's just, you know, people and like money comes from there. The other thing that I find really helpful too is like when I'm making the triangle and kind of figuring out like, okay, what do I want for the next 30 days? I will then go ahead and like let myself be in the energy of having it where it's like, okay, let's sit in meditation and pretend, so to speak, that I made the $30,000. Like it's in my bank account. I bought all of the things that are on my list. I'm set up for the next, whatever, you know, anything that I decided. And then literally sit in like the gratitude of that. And like that is helpful because you've already created the feeling and then it's just a matter of the things showing up. And when you show up for them, it's really hard for it not to work.
I love that. I tend to not, I don't know if this is weird or not. I like don't make my goals, but I'm like okay with it. And I always set like really high goals because I'm like, well, what I actually want is way down here. But then I like set this like crazy thing and I always exceed what like I quote unquote actually want.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's totally a person to person thing.
Okay.
Like, there's some people who are great with that because they know like, cool, I hit my real goal, even though it wasn't on my triangle. You know what I mean? And there are other people that need to have it so it's attainable and so that they're doing it to feel good going forward. So I think that just comes back to like, who am I? What feels good? Like,
is that a manifester thing?
It might be actually. I mean, that makes sense saying that.
Yeah.
Anyway. I like to hit mine. I actually had a really interesting last month. I made my triangle, made my goal, whatever. And it was like a short term. I was, I think I was launching something and I was like, I want to make 20K in the next like 10 days. Wrote it out. Another thing that I do in tandem with the triangle is I will journal. Like I flash forward. So I was like, okay, it's 20 days from now and I feel so good. I'm so grateful. Like, here's what I did. This program is full. And in it, I wrote, I collected like $16,000, And I came back to it because I was like explaining this to my mastermind recently. And I read through the journal entry and I was like, oh my God, I wrote 16,000 instead of 20,000 in the journal entry. And my like thermometer was still on my table and I made 16,000.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay, we have to be very careful about like how we put intentions out and like what we're actually creating because we're making all of this up.
Yeah. No, and the other day, like I'm not a journaler, but I for some reason had this like compulsion to write myself a future letter, like and I've never really done that exercise. I've heard of it. And so I just was like, must write to myself in the future. And I just like wrote about myself like next year and like all of the things that have happened in the next year. Cause like, I mean, you know, and people know on the podcast, like I'm pregnant and like lots of changes are probably going to happen. And I'm just like, what does that mean for my business? And as much as I'm planning, like, I don't know what that experience is going to be like. And so I was just like writing about that. And like, I really want to go build our dream home. And I don't know if that's going to be happening like now, if like sales goals happen, or if that's going to happen like 3 to 5 years from now. And I just wrote in there, I was like, you're going to move in very soon. And like, you're building. And I'm like, great.
I love
I don't know. It was just like nice.
No, it's so interesting too, when I feel like there's things that we want and then there's, of course, there's unknowns and then we're creating. So kind of like remembering that. And that's what you're doing too by writing is like, you're creating your world. And oh my gosh, the dog barking just.
Do you have a dog? I don't think you have a dog, right?
I don't.
Neighbors?
It's my neighbor's dog.
Okay. I was like, that's news to me.
Yep. Oh, when you're creating what you want in the writing, you actually can find out information too, because it's like, we don't know right here. I don't know in my consciousness, like what's happening next, but somewhere around me does. Like, and so being able to tap into that and like, oh yeah, this is coming, or to ask questions, like, and go back and forth with, I've written letters to myself that are like, dear Erin, like blah, 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 blah. Here's a question. And then I'll write back like, hi, Erin, and just see what actually comes through.
Yeah,
because
no, I've heard of that. Jess Lively, I don't know if you follow her, but she does a lot of that, like in writing to your intuition. And it's very much like that, which again, like I know all these things in concept, but I haven't actually done them, which I was like, oh, this is weird. I'm just like compulsively writing to myself this morning. But
It's beautiful.
yeah.
Take it, right? I just did because I kept hearing about it over and over, which I was like, this is weird. Now it's 3 times. Was writing yourself like a question with your dominant hand and then answering the question with your non-dominant hand, which looks so weird. My notebook looks like me and my daughter wrote back and forth.
Are we going to talk about the inner child?
I mean, we're here. It wasn't my plan, but basically you can connect like with different parts of you and see what's there, which is interesting.
Yeah.
If nothing else, it's weird.
So Erin is like very, very into and great at like the whole connecting with like your inner child. And
which
like
is so funny
to heal your inner child.
Like, yeah.
Well, you even told, like, we were Voxering the other day and you were like, by the way, I like mother myself and I mother other people and we like do all the inner child work. And I'm like, all right, I was triggered by this in a therapy session.
Away. You know, it's so funny because I totally do. And it's totally not something that is actually like that I lead with or that I think is like a very me thing or anything like that. It's been shown to me a number of times. And like Jamie Jensen has said to me, she's like, I'm pretty sure your work, like the children thing is very important. And I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. But it wasn't until recently that I was like, oh, this is actually what we're doing. Because as women, adult, conscious, woke women, like we are figuring out how to mother ourselves. And like, that's called being an adult. And just with the women I work with, so many of them are thinking about children, just had children, or deciding if they want children. Like it's just the times are changing from us going from the child to the adult. And what happens during that transformation is we have the opportunity to heal a bunch of shit that we left open as kids. And it shows up in your life and business, because if you don't feel safe or if part of you doesn't feel safe, like then we have temper tantrums or make a mess or like have a hissy fit or feel really sad and can't understand why. So
which without even doing like the inner child work, meditation in and of itself has helped me so much, because even though I might want to have some reaction, it helps create like that practice of pausing before you have a reaction. And I've been doing it every day, 20 minutes for the past year and a half. And like who I was like last year compared to who I am now, and the way I've been able to react to situations is just like night and day. And it's literally because of meditation. That's it.
Wow. That's so cool. I have not, just to be totally honest, I have not been able to keep or haven't chosen to, whatever, to keep like a steady practice of anything I can't think of that I do like every single day with this stuff. For me, like it has to be variety, and it has to be like, oh, what do I want right now? Like, what do I feel like? And like, I'll come at it from all different angles. So I always think it's interesting how like for some people,
like, you know how some people can get like addicted to exercise? Like I wish that was me, but it's not. But like, I think I'm addicted to meditation because of the way like it sets the rest of my day up. And like, if I don't, then I kind of have a shitty day. Like it's just, I feel like I'm a little bit more like reactive to situations. I have a little bit more anxiety. And so it's just like if I want to have a good day, like go do it for 20 minutes. And I'm not saying like I've missed days, like I have, I would say, you know, at least 5 days a week for the past year and a half. Like that's what I do.
Just becomes a priority. I love that.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a few minutes here, and I would love, probably selfishly, to talk about parenting and being a business owner. And I don't know, just share. I love watching your Instagram because you're always sharing like nuggets of parenting and like situations, and it's like hilarious and awesome, but you're also very like, you know, wise. Like you were talking about how like you like the other day, Violet, your daughter, like saw a bunch of the bullying happen, or the guys fighting, and you were like, my immediate reaction was this, but then I had to reframe it, and here's how I want to like, you know, have conscious conversations with my daughter around certain situations. And it's just, I'm like, I would never think about that. I need like Erin to like guide me.
So it's this whole curiosity thing, right? Like when you have, which I think meditation builds too, is that like mindful muscle of like just looking at things. And I have found that like kids are so interesting because they're just like, they just teach you all about yourself and make you question everything that you've thought and what you think, because now you're passing it on. And like, for some reason that feels more important than what we do with ourselves. So yeah, when I was walking to the school bus stop with Violet the other day, there were these kids like fighting, and they were play fighting, and I knew that, but she couldn't tell that. And she like started to hide behind me, and I was like, what's up, Vi? And she was like, those boys look mean to me. And I was like, they're just silly boys. And then I was like, oh my God, Erin, like, what are we doing? And I had
But it's just like, I probably wouldn't even like question that. I'd just like have my reaction and like go. And I was just like, oh my gosh, she's so smart to even like have the reaction, question it, and like reframe it. Anyway.
Yeah. And I think that's really like, that's a product of 2018 and everything that's going on. And
yep.
The Me Too movement and Kavanaugh, and it was all, I feel very passionately about those topics. So I almost have like the same way you'd have a Google alert for your name, I like have that for like, what am I saying to my kids that like is not, does not match up with like what I believe and what I want for our country.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. And I think you'll find too, and this is anybody, but like, it's the kid thing. Like, it's not even me. It's literally the way they show you things makes you think about everything in a different way and like use your mind in a way that like you just don't maybe don't have access to before. I taught preschool for years as well. So I've always been really interested in kids and like how we're transforming them, like because their minds are creating so quickly and they're listening so hard. And it's just such an interesting thing to hear them saying things back to you that are your words. And it's like, okay, I need to make sure they're the right words.
Yeah.
And like that I'm passing on the beliefs that I want them to have, not the ones that were passed down to me that I've never checked before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting. And as far as like, gosh, kids in business and all of that jazz, it's just such a learning experience. And trial and error, and like there is no book and we're making everything up. And that's what I think everything kind of comes back to, from business and creating services to raising children, is like it's the ultimate like don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I think it's going to be okay. And how can I show up for it to make it the best it can be?
Awesome. All right. So 2 final things. Where can people find you? And do you have any parting words of advice?
Okay, you can find me at erinlindstrom.com or at Erin Lindstrom on Insta is like my favorite place to hang out digitally. And parting advice is just get really curious about yourself and the world and figuring out like what you want, because there's so many hidden nuggets like in your desires. You're supposed to have all of them. Like the universe wants you to have what you want. And when we take the path towards them, we'll figure out what you want on the way there. And everything's always changing, but just start with, what do I want?
I love it. All right. Thank you so much, Erin. It was amazing to talk to you, as always.
Yay. Thank you for having me. This was awesome.
Yay. Hey guys, I'm here to chat about an online system that I can't get enough of. I'm sure you hear from a lot of online business owners who've been scaling their businesses and about how having systems in place that work for them have been essential for their growth. Putting systems in place might be getting solid processes down, or it can be using a program like Seva to run your email marketing. When it comes to growing my business, the more intuitive something is, the better. Seva, which was formerly ConvertKit, is by far the most intuitive and easy to use program that I have ever used when it comes to growing your email list. They have easy pop-ups you can use on your website, forms that send out free downloads for content upgrades on your blog posts, and 24-hour help if you ever run into a snag. They have amazing customer service and have even helped us custom code some beautiful forms for our clients with no extra charge. I love that they're able to do that, and it's always so helpful. We use Seva here at pinegateroad and always recommend them to our clients. If you're saying yes, please, to an intuitive system for email marketing, head to pinegateroad.com/email to grab a free 30 days to start growing your email list and upping your marketing game. Thank you so much to our sponsors for making this show possible. And thanks to you for taking the time to spend some time with me here today. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor or catching up on past episodes, head to pinegateroad.com/podcast to learn more. Sending lots of love, and remember, you've got this. See you next week.